Thanks very much for the introduction, and thanks, Francesca, for that inspiring talk. It is a difficult act to follow, and I have a very short time to try to tell you a little bit about this. In some sense, professional performance is one of our four major topic areas at this year's hackathon, derived from our interest in AI. And it's maybe the least well-defined. Professional performance, you can imagine being defined as a number of different things, but really anything that helps anyone in the healthcare profession within their daily lives, within their professional lives. And so that can be reducing barriers to access care. It can be improving the types of care that we deliver, freeing up physicians to tackle more complicated cases, removing a lot of the sort of day-to-day legwork from healthcare professionals' lives. And so we could go on and on about that, and I certainly don't have time to do that. One of the areas in which my group works and that is typically cited when we talk about professional performance in medicine is the idea of computer-aided diagnostics or decision support tools. And so I'm just going to give you an example of one particular decision support tool that I and a number of collaborators around this institution, including some people who are in this room right now, worked on over the last few years. And I like to give this example because I think it's particularly relevant for the hackathon setting here, especially because of how many different types of people were required to effect a solution and to understand the need. What our AI group at Mount Sinai has historically been interested in is the sort of intersection of natural language processing as well as radiological image analysis. And we're also primarily interested in neurosurgery and cranial issues. And that's our home department. So we took on this challenge of trying to understand how we could better triage patients who come into, for example, an emergency room with symptoms that look like an emergent event, and this might be something like a stroke or hemorrhagic event or the type of intracranial event that requires an urgent intervention. And one of the things that we identified was not simply the need for a technology that would say, this is condition A, this is condition B, this is condition C, when a patient came into the ER, but instead something actually far simpler, which is to look along the course of what happens to a patient when they come in from the street into the emergency room, and what the process is to get those patients that require an urgent intervention to the place they need to be. So, for example, maybe if it's an ischemic stroke event, into an interventional radiology suite. And so understanding that whole pathway from entrance to the care that they need was really required to understand that one of the things that we could do wasn't just to build the best AI tool in the world, but rather to in a binary fashion triage patients into those that are of urgent need and those that were not. So we built a tool to do this, and we built this based on a convolutional neural network in conjunction with some weekly supervised learning and propagation from natural language reports in radiology to build a huge data set of CT images and then build a classifier that actually isn't as good as a human. But what it is much better than a human at is speed. And so it can take a scan that you might get on a CT, which is the standard diagnostic tool used if you come into the ER and you have a symptom of some kind of stroke or hemorrhagic event, and immediately tell us whether or not there's a high probability that that patient is in need of urgent intervention. So you can see here on the left, I'm not going to go through the details of this slide. There's a lot of stuff on here, but basically what we're trying to do is just take that collection, that stream of events that come into the ER with these types of symptoms, and try to filter out those ones that are the most likely to be in need of emergent intervention. If you are unfamiliar, typically a radiology work queue is sort of a first in, first out kind of thing. A patient comes in and they're in queue and everyone waits in line behind that person. And so what we did is we sort of flipped this a little bit and said, instead of just a first in, first out queue, we're going to prioritize the queue as a function of the score that this good but not perfect artificial intelligence technology will tell us. And then ran a simulated prospective control trial and looked at what the time savings was between the presentation in the ER and the acquisition of a CT scan to when they were triaged to the appropriate place, and saw a significant reduction in the amount of time that it takes to actually do that. So this wasn't building the best AI tool in the world, but it was identifying a need that could be reasonably addressed with AI technology. And the reason that I give this example within the context of a hackathon is simply because the vast majority of people on this slide, which make up our group at AI Sinai, were involved in one way or another at defining this problem. And so if you all look around at all of your badges here, you all have different colors because you all have different levels of expertise, and every single one of those underlying levels, of those individual domain topic expertise areas are represented on this slide of all the people that contributed to the work. So thank you very much.